Hello and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm Joe Rimmer and I'm joined by two very special guests today. Looking great there, Theo. Obviously, if you're listening to this at home, it was our Christmas night out last night, and Theo, I think, was in there for the long haul.
I didn't plan to be.
Theo. How are you feeling?
Not too bad. I came across Sam Carroll when I was walking to get a taxi at like 3 a.m, locked out of his flat. So I had to rescue him. So I was woken up probably before 7 o'clock by him asking where his coat was, having lost the coat on the night out. So that's as good as the night went. He managed to get himself home in the end. But yeah, it was a good night out, as it always is, isn't it, for us at Christmas?
Yeah, you rescued the damsel in distress there in Sam Carroll. It's not the first time he's been rescued on a night out. But a very, very special Blood Red debut today, in difficult circumstances as well, Beth. For Beth Lindop, who is our Merseyside women's reporter, joined the team about a month ago, I'd say. And, it's your first podcast?
It is. I've been roped in. I think some people have been stricken down after last night. So, thank you very much for having me.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot, Beth, because we're going to start, before we start having a natter about LFC things this week, I'm going to start by asking you a bit about yourself. Tell us the Beth Lindop story. I've heard rumours that you're some sort of child prodigy singer as well. So, I wanted to comment on that as well.
I'm not sure I'd go as far as child prodigy. I did like a sing back in the day. That was the route I wanted to go down actually. For a little while, performing arts, and then decided, you know what, it's probably not a lot of money in that. Where is there a lot of money? Journalism. Quickly learned that isn't the case. But I actually started off. It was thanks to you actually. I got first started off at the Echo, did a little bit of time on sport while I was at uni, and then became a turncoat. Went over to news, onto the Echo's news desk, and then sort of off the back of the Euros in the summer, the women's Euros. We have a new women's football team at Reach, so we have like correspondents across the country, covering primarily the WSL, but the Lionesses and various other bits and bobs as well. So I'm across sort of all of that, which is great. So I'm mainly looking at Liverpool and Everton, but it's a really exciting time to be getting involved in women's football, I think.
Great. Well, we'll have a little natter about women's football and Liverpool ladies. Liverpool ladies, sorry, I'm talking like it's 2014. Liverpool women at the end of this pod. But we'll start. I'm just trying to think of what bigger story for Liverpool this week is, and it just feels like every single day we can't escape the name Jude Bellingham. So Theo, I mean, this is the week. I'm gonna put my cards on the table here. This is the week that has convinced me, just through the things that I'm reading, the things that I seem to be hearing at the moment, that I think Jude Bellingham will end up at Liverpool. Does there feel like it's going that way at the moment? There just seems to be a lot of groundwork going in England, training and England games, and I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of hints being dropped. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think my gut feeling all along has been, if the player wants the move, it's going to happen. Like we saw Liverpool miss out on Aurelien Tchouameni in the summer because they were told he just wants to go to Real Madrid. And it feels more and more that this time it's actually gone in Liverpool's favour. It feels like Jude Bellingham would choose them over the money, or going to La Liga, or going to Man City, or I know PSG threw the name into the ring this week. But it feels like something that just fits. Obviously, I did the Euros last year when he got into the squad then, and you could see the groundwork starting there, because that's when this blossoming relationship with Jordan Henderson started. And you think Trent missed that tournament through injury. So it was Jude Bellingham that was next to him at all the times, like whether it was going for food or just examining the pitch or this sort of thing. And you can tell he really looks up to him. He's a really good mentor for him. And it's just like when Liverpool signed Jordan Henderson, it was they needed a midfielder to be the long-term leader as a Steven Gerrard successor. Obviously, it's impossible to fill Steven Gerrard's shoes, but it feels like it's almost history repeating itself now if they can get Jude Bellingham. Obviously, a very different player to Jordan Henderson, but it's that succession plan in place again. Like you hear the reports from Germany where it's Liverpool leading the chase, the family are convinced with Liverpool. And then you see all these, videos and clips of he's out with Jordan Henderson again. He's out with Trent Alexander-Arnold again. They're like teasing about, he's not going Real Madrid or he's signing Liverpool shirts. All of that adds up. And obviously they can't come out and say, yep, Liverpool, it's done. Like, they've still got to go to the negotiating table with Borussia Dortmund, agree a transfer fee, agree personal terms. And you're hoping that he's not been taken to any dodgy trips to Blackpool, because we know what happened with Virgil van Dijk. But it does seem to be, with every passing day in the World Cup, we're feeling positive. Like, at the start, it was a pipe dream almost, like with Mbappe, who I'm sure we'll get to in a bit as well. There's always the hashtag, was it Mbappe 2020, Mbappe 2021, 22, so on. Bellingham, it feels a bit more realistic, and it's throughout the World Cup, it's just getting more and more realistic with each day. And you will say, if Liverpool don't get him now after all this groundwork, the questions are going to be asked, like fans are going to be fuming, and it'll just feel like, how on earth has this slipped through their fingers? I know Trent came out and said, when he put the picture of the two of them together on Instagram, it's not Agent Trent, it's just out with his friend. It's like, nah, Trent, you know exactly what comments are coming back on that post. You're feeding the frenzy here. So
they both, sorry, they both feel like they're feeding the frenzy a little bit. Even Jordan Henderson, who, he's not, I mean, Jordan Henderson is a great figurehead, but he's very media trained, isn't he? And he doesn't say things that he doesn't mean, but there seems to be something going on between the three of them at the moment, doesn't there?
Definitely. And you think, well, there's 5 Man City players in this squad, and Man City are apparently one of the teams in it as well. You don't see him hanging out with Jack Grealish the same way, or Calvin Phillips, Kyle Walker. It's the Liverpool 2 that he's with. And that could just be, they're mates. There's no Real Madrid players in this camp, and we're reading too much into it, and we're all setting ourselves up for massive disappointment. But surely when you join all these dots together, we're going to be celebrating the successful. Continue working on a night out, mate. I'm that. We're going to be celebrating this next summer, hopefully. But then it'd even be better if they could somehow get it done in January. But at the moment, you just don't know, do you? We're waiting to see, and just enjoying watching Jude Bellingham burst onto the scene at the World Cup, the same way fans would remember Michael Owen doing in '98, Wayne Rooney in 2004. It's another generational talent that whoever he's playing for, they're going to be lucky to have him. Hopefully, it's Liverpool.
Yeah, Beth, I mean, if Liverpool do pull this off and they sign Jude Bellingham, how much of a coup is it for Liverpool, considering, first of all, the finances involved in getting him is going to be, well, it will almost certainly be Liverpool's record signing if they do get him. The clubs that are also involved in the shape of Real Madrid and Man City, and just the performances at the World Cup. It really feels like Bellingham has jumped into this superstar in the way only the World Cup can launch a player into like sort of the nation and the world's consciousness, the way it's done with Jude Bellingham. So how big a deal would it be for Liverpool to pull this off?
I think it'd be huge. I think sort of that, like you say, in terms of beating out the likes of Real Madrid and City, and you have to say, if he does come to Liverpool, I think it will be down to his personal preference wanting to come and be part of the club, which is a huge statement, really, because you would imagine the likes of Real Madrid and Manchester City could probably stump up more in terms of wages. So, for Liverpool to be sort of his first choice, which is, if reports that have been coming out this week is to be believed, that does seem to be the case. There's been reports that even if Liverpool don't qualify for the Champions League, which hopefully isn't the case, but he would still prefer a move to Liverpool, which is a huge statement. And I think you mentioned him turning into a superstar. His performances on the pitch have certainly showed that. But I think what's impressed me about him as well is it's not just his performances. It's like he's ready-made to be a superstar. Even when you see him speaking to the media, he's so mature, so composed, and sort of those leadership qualities that he's got as well at 19. It's absolutely it's absurd, really. And I think sort of the one thing under Jurgen Klopp that I think the squad has been missing, and even going back to winning the league and the Champions League is that real sort of superstar in midfield. I think obviously it worked for a number of years with the three of Hendo, Ginny and Fabinho, but I think you don't have that sort of superstar quality that you've got in, for example, Manchester City's midfield. I think, a lot of fans thought Thiago coming in would be that. And I'm a huge fan of Thiago. He's sublime footballer who really is. But in terms of sort of week in, week out and having that sort of monumental impact on the team, I don't necessarily think he's had that. Whereas I think, if Bellingham was to get over the line and to come to Liverpool, the effect that would have, I think it would almost be sort of, Van Dijk-esque, Alisson-esque in terms of the sort of transformational, aspect it could have on the squad.
Transfers. Go on, sorry.
About these 19 as well. Was it Gary Neville who said Steven Gerrard wasn't doing this at 19? Like, he didn't really get into the team properly and take it up that level until he was saying 21, I think, when Liverpool won the treble. He won PFA Young Player of the Year. Whereas Bellingham, it's not as though this has come out of nowhere either. He's been doing this for 18 months. He's been that standout player, got the armband with Dortmund so early on. It's like, this is what he's like now, he's not going to peak for another 6-7 years. Whoever signs him, if they can keep him for his career, you're not just signing a player for 10 years. You're getting 15 years out of him. And even then, he's 34? Modric is still going strong, 36, 37? You're signing a midfielder here who is going to be the best player potentially in his position when he gets to his peak, like we saw Steven Gerrard become. And then he's going to be there for the succession after that when guiding the next stars. So Liverpool, if they get it right and he's very happy with them, he stays with them, or whoever he joins, you're potentially signing for someone for 15, 20 years. And that's madness to think that. And when it's someone who could be best midfielder in the world, it's just, it's that consistency you're going to have to it. That's how Liverpool are safe for the future. Like, there's always been the grumbles about the midfield from, the Brexit trio of Gini, Milner and Henderson when they were losing that first Champions League final. As Beth said, it's that superstar player that they could have. But when you're signing a superstar player who's 19 and only going to get better, it's still been a criticism of Liverpool under FSG that they never go and sign a finished article. That's always someone that step before, and Klopp takes them to that next level. But there's no complaints about them doing here. You don't want them to go and get someone at the peak of the powers when you can get a Jude Bellingham, because he is going to be this sensational player who we're going to be talking about whoever he plays for the next 2 decades, and that's just crazy to think.
Yeah, I mean, Beth, we keep calling him a superstar, don't we? And we talk about his age; they're 19, but he doesn't necessarily act like a superstar, does he? In terms of his body language and his just his maturity. He doesn't. He looks like a lad who's got a lot to learn, who wants to learn a lot. And I know that he seems to come from a good family. His dad is his agent, and they obviously advise him quite well. So a move to Liverpool, it feels right for him, doesn't it? It feels like a match made in heaven. I think other players might be swayed by the glamour of Real Madrid or the money of Man City, but Liverpool and Bellingham just feels right, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think, it's the sort of player you can just imagine him, Champions League semi-final at Anfield, stood in front of the Kop, soaking it all in. Like, I think he's that sort of player you can just, like you say, I think he is a perfect fit for Liverpool. I really do, in terms of his playing style, but equally in terms of his character. I think, that's been one of the greatest strengths, I think, under Jurgen Klopp, is he's had so many good characters within the squad. And I think he's another lad who could come in and just, and like you say, just be a real character in the dressing room, a real leader on the pitch, and someone who I don't think, he's getting so much hype at the moment. At 19 years old, that must be so difficult to deal with, and being under such scrutiny and such intense media pressure, and it doesn't seem to faze him at all. So I think that's another thing that's really impressed me with him, and something that I think bodes well if he does come to Liverpool. I don't think he's the sort of player, we obviously saw sort of Jadon Sancho on a similar trajectory with Dortmund, and then making that big move to United, and obviously hasn't really worked out for him. But I can't see sort of Bellingham, even if he goes for what's likely to probably transfer record, certainly. I can't see him being overawed by that. I can't see him sort of like you say, sort of thinking he's getting too big for his boots, or being swayed by the glamour of various different things. I think he's got such a good mentality, which obviously paired with his playing ability too is a real asset, and hopefully Liverpool can get it over the line.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know everyone likes to get excited about transfers, Theo, but I do think, and let's face it, clubs have won the transfer market in the past, and it hasn't always worked out that way. But winning in the transfer market or getting a player like this is significant, isn't it? And it will help Liverpool at a time when, perhaps there's some questions of leadership where they're going there. They've fallen away a little bit in the league. Getting Bellingham will sort of keep Liverpool in the minds of other big clubs, won't it, and other big players, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because they're in a transitional period still. It's this gradual overhaul of an aging squad who've been riddled with injury-prone players, especially in midfield. So it is a telling sign that they've managed to get Jurgen Klopp to sign a new contract earlier in the year when we thought that would be it for him when his last deal expired, and then that you're still able to lure in one of these talents. Like, it was a big statement when Liverpool were doing it the first time, when Virgil van Dijk only had eyes for them, despite interest from City and Chelsea, I think it was. And then to see them get Alisson, even Fabinho to a lesser extent. But, those transfers came off the back of, say, selling Coutinho, and they've not really had to make do too much surgery to the squad since then, despite calls from the outside. Like, this would be that next big investment step into it. And it would be such a big boost, a big coup, a message to everyone that Liverpool are still here. If by some miracle we're talking they could get him in January, he's going to do what Luis Diaz did, isn't it? Like, last January, it looked like Liverpool's title bid was dead. They go and sign Luis Diaz, and they're suddenly competing for a quadruple. Now, that wasn't entirely down to him, but we saw the shot in the arm he gave that Liverpool squad. Like, fans get excited about new signings, but the players do too. Like, we've heard it from likes of Gerrard and Carragher, how they'd judge players in their first training session, and when they'd have a good one, they'd be going home just absolutely buzzing, can't wait to see more from them. Well, Liverpool players like Henderson and Trent, they've already seen this from Bellingham in training. They know exactly how good a player he is and what Liverpool could be getting hold of. So it would definitely give him a nice little boost whenever he moves on. But on the other side of it, if they miss out, it's going to be devastating, isn't it? Like, we've been talking about it for so long, and now when it's feeling like it's within that grasp, like whenever we'd had the talks about Mbappe, it was tongue-in-cheek. You never realistically thought Liverpool were going to spend 300 million or whatever ridiculous fee it would get to get Kylian Mbappe. But it feels like we can talk about Jude Bellingham, say club record fee. Yeah, they want to make it happen, find a way to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about the fee, the type of player, what it would mean for Liverpool. But just quickly, I mean, I'd watched Bellingham various times with Dortmund a little bit. Probably never really watched full 90 minutes of him playing, just watching him. And, you've seen Champions League highlights or whatever it might be. But Beth, this World Cup, how impressed have you been by him? He just has been brilliant, hasn't he?
He has. And I think obviously, got into the Euro squad last year, but was maybe sort of slightly more of a bit part player, whereas if you ask anyone, I think, who's been the standout performer for England, 90% of people would say him. And again, as we've said, to do that at 19, it's phenomenal. And like you said, I'll hold my hands up and say I watched bits of him for Dortmund, and highlights, but I've not sat and watched him and focused on him to the extent that I have over the last few weeks. And I think sort of what epitomises him was that in the build up to that goal, to England's goal, who was it who scored it on in the last round, where he wins it sort of, and carries the ball, and you're thinking, oh, pass it, and he doesn't panic, he holds on to it, releases the ball, it's the absolute inch perfect pass there for Foden, and then to have that composure in such a decisive game at 19 years old, he's been an absolute superstar, and excited to see him in action tomorrow as well.
Definitely. Well, another player who's been an absolute superstar for Liverpool is Roberto Firmino. Obviously, he's had his ups and downs, but this year he's come sort of roaring back, hasn't he, with 7 goals in the Premier League, the top scorer. Theo, there's some rumours today about his contract. We're yet to get it completely stood up, but it would make sense, wouldn't it, if Liverpool try to keep him? And how significant would it be if they can keep hold of him for another few years at least?
Yeah, I think it'd be an important one if they could get him to commit for another couple of years. Like with Salah, it felt like it was a fight to convince him to get a contract that was right for him, even though it's what he wanted to do. We saw Sadio Mane, he wanted that new challenge. But with Firmino, he's almost been taken for granted, left in the background, because you always just assumed that it was Liverpool's decision. If they wanted to keep him, then he's going to stay. Because he loves being at the club. He's never someone who you realistically see being linked with big elite clubs elsewhere, and they were fighting to keep hold of him. in the same way. I think Doyley did a piece maybe last month where he's saying Firmino's become the player that Liverpool couldn't sign when he was first choice. So the fact that they didn't have someone who could come in and out, make that impact, because it was an untouchable front three and there was that big drop off beneath them. Whereas now they've got Firmino there who's able to offer the experience. He can come in up front and make an impact, but you're not relying on him to start every single game. And he has had to adapt to his role, but he seems to be thriving in it as well. Like, he's offering these goals this year and he seems to be a lot more relaxed. Like last season, it was hard for him. He had so many injury setbacks and we'd never seen him have these setbacks before. So it was easy to write him off and say he was finished. It's probably cost him his place for Brazil in the World Cup squad, if we're honest, because there was like a year where he wasn't playing for them. Every time the squad was being named, he was either just back from injury or had just suffered an injury. And you think, well, he's getting old now. He's probably past his best. But this year, he's just silenced his critics emphatically. You're looking at a player who's providing these goals. He fits so well into Liverpool's style. He's played more games under Klopp than anyone else. He's certainly someone you want to keep around as an elder statesman in the squad who you can turn to. Like for these Champions League nights, if you need a goal, he's a great option to throw off the bench. You can cause defenders damage. And he's a bit different to, say, Darwin Núñez. You want that variety of options to win you a game. He's proven his quality again this season. Long may it continue. Makes sense that these rumours reports are coming out about a contract offer now, because we're talking start of December. If nothing happens and he goes into January with 6 months left on his contract, you can talk to foreign clubs. And then it's pre-contract agreement. There's more of a risk of losing him. But if he wants to stay at Liverpool and Liverpool want him to stay, you'd imagine it'd be quite straightforward for him to get something done.
Yeah, well, many people might be listening to this pod after these two games, but we're recording on Friday, and there's a huge match that obviously Firmino's not involved with because he's not with Brazil, but his teammates Fabinho and Alisson, Alisson will be, Fabinho perhaps not, be involved in. Feels like a huge game. So it's been a weird week for Alisson because he made a lot of saves in the last game against South Korea, but there seems to have been some strange criticism of him. Peter Schmeichel was criticising him, and as was Ruud Gullit. But it could be massively significant for Alisson, couldn't it, if he can get through and if Brazil can go all the way in this competition, Beth? Because I feel like Liverpool fans know just this, but perhaps not in the wider football world. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, I think as well with Alisson, a lot of it comes down to you very rarely see him making these Hollywood saves and spectacular saves. And that's not because he's not making fantastic saves. It's because his positioning, his composure, everything is so good. He always seems to be in the right place to make things look easy. And I think that's probably why sometimes, rival, fans from other clubs that look at him and they go, oh, well, he's not as good as X, Y, Z. But undoubtedly, for me, he's player of the season for Liverpool so far. Like you say, showed his importance against South Korea as well. And yeah, I'd be delighted for him if he, on a personal level, for him to win that, because he is an absolute superstar. We're very, very lucky to have him at Liverpool. And I think, there is always sort of the debate about, should it be him? Should it be Ederson starting for Brazil? I think Alisson sort of lost his place sort of briefly earlier this year. Ederson obviously came in for a little while. And, obviously I think Ederson has, he's a great goalkeeper. It's why he's at Manchester City. But for me, the absolute poles apart. I think, Ederson gets a lot of credit for how good he is with the ball at his feet. But I do, I'd have Alisson sort of every day over him, to be honest. I think Ederson has a mistake in him, which, obviously Alisson has had on previous occasions, but yeah, he's a superstar. And I think, if Brazil could go all the way, I'd be absolutely delighted for him and for Fabinho too, but for Alisson in particular.
So, some odd criticism, wasn't it, Theo? I mean, I couldn't really work out why Peter Schmeichel seemed to be so, I don't know, critical of him. He seems to, just said he doesn't fill me with confidence and that he has a mistake in him. And I don't know, what has Alisson done to deserve that? Because I don't see him making many mistakes week in, week out. Every goalkeeper makes the odd mistake. Peter Schmeichel made many big mistakes in his time at United, but it was what he also did with some of the saves and just the presence he had. The presence Alisson has had on Liverpool's back four is just immeasurable, isn't it?
You think what he's done wrong in Peter Schmeichel's eyes is play for Liverpool. He's Manchester United legend. Maybe there's a bit of bias that comes into it there. But what really strikes me about Alisson is he doesn't blow his own trumpet. Like with goalkeepers, there always seems to be a bit of an arrogance about them. It's crazy stories. And there's always just something about them that's a bit spiky. Like you think of Courtois. This year, it seems like he's gone to war with pretty much everyone. Like before the Champions League final, after the Champions League final. Now with Belgium having a poor World Cup as well, where he's saying, "Oh, British media don't respect me. I should have won the Ballon d'Or." All these things. You never hear Alisson saying like this, but maybe because he doesn't blow his own trumpet and make those headlines, that's why it's easier for him to go under the radar with outsiders. But we're talking about a goalkeeper here who's won every single major honour with Liverpool, and he's won the Copa America. So that's the equivalent of European Championships. If he now goes and wins a World Cup as well, he's completed football. He's completed the set. Like, there's nothing else he can achieve. He won the goalkeeping equivalent of the Ballon d'Or, didn't he? The first year, was it the Copper Award?
Yeah,
so he's achieved everything apart from the World Cup that there is for him to achieve. And you still think he's going to get better as well because he's, 30? There could be another 4 or 5 years out of him here. But because he doesn't blow his own trumpet and he doesn't make these headlines, you just judge him on what you see in games. And it's when you don't watch players for 90 minutes, if they make a mistake, that's what opposing fans will judge them on. Like you think back to his first season when he was it the silly one against Leicester? Those sort of things. Whereas we see him 90 minutes week in, week out, and it's beyond that superb save against Napoli in the last minute on the way to the Champions League final glory. We see him making these ones where he stands up strong and he makes it all look so simple and straightforward. There are no camera saves. He saves things you don't expect a goalkeeper to save, and he makes it look easy. And he's not there giving it the big fist pumps to the crowd with players jumping on him like you see a Jordan Pickford do or anything like that. He's just so down to earth. Obviously, he had an understandable blip last season for personal reasons, lost his place in the Brazil team. They lost Copa America that year with Ederson in goal. And it's not necessarily because Ederson was at fault or had a bad tournament. I think there was a little bit of criticism for the winning goal in the final because he was off his line too early. He was in no man's land. And Di Maria just chipped him. But Alisson is just that all-round goalkeeper that wins you games, and he goes about his business so quietly. It'd be very good for him if he could win the World Cup and get those headlines, because you think back to some of these great Brazil sides of yesteryear, all those star names, he deserves his place to be amongst them because he has won everything. Long may it continue.
Well, Beth, I've got some breaking news now at 1:30 on Friday afternoon. Some pretty frustrating news for Liverpool. Luis Diaz, who's been back in training, Liverpool's Dubai training camp, has suffered a setback and has had to fly back to the UK. He's complained of discomfort and undergo further assessment. So he's been out since October. It's a big blow, isn't it? Let's face it. Liverpool will just hope that this is, perhaps not a huge setback and won't put him on the shelf for long, and maybe just pushes that comeback a couple of weeks rather than months. But Liverpool really missed him, haven't they?
Yeah, that's a huge blow, really, really huge. And like you say, I think Liverpool will be hoping that, by the time sort of the Premier League kicks back in, he's not too far off coming back to the squad, because like Theo said earlier on, that the impact that he had when he came in January, it was huge. It was he's the sort of player who can win you games by himself sometimes. The impact that he has, his ability to take players on, which we saw Sadio Mane do that so many times sort of for Liverpool over the years. I think maybe in his last season, actually, that was quite frustrating, as you didn't maybe see Mane going at players as much. And I think Diaz came in and did that. He's not afraid to do that, his pace. And I think, in games where Liverpool have been poor, he so often has had that moment of quality. Think back to that game against Spurs toward the end of last season. Obviously, ultimately, potentially cost Liverpool the league. But without Diaz getting that point, getting the goal, it wouldn't have gone down to the final day. So yeah, he's a superb player and a huge blow for Liverpool if he is going to be out for too much longer.
Yeah, Theo, he still feels like something fresh, doesn't he, Diaz? And I think that has been the issue for Liverpool this season. And when he's played, he gives them something different. Like Beth says, he seems to run at people, commit defenders. So this is, it's the worst possible news for Liverpool as they try and get back and get their squad ready for the second half of the season, isn't it?
Yeah, he feels like he's going to be this big player for Liverpool for the next 5 years or whatever, because he made such an impact straight away, offering goals and assists, and like you say, running at defenders and terrifying them. He straight away proved himself to be a match winner for Liverpool, and he's probably the one player in the squad at the moment, along with Salah, that you got that fear for if they drop out and they're injured, because these are the players that win you games. He made such an impact in that first 6 months, and he was probably Liverpool's best player when it wasn't going from on the pitch in the first 2 months of the season. He was the one still getting goals and delivering for them. And while Liverpool found a way to pick up and win without him after the injury, we're all looking forward to just seeing him back in action end of this month and then 2023 onwards. And now it's hoping that it's not going to be bad news and it's just a minor setback and he can come back fitter and stronger. We've done our fans football of the year shout. He was my shout. I thought out of the players left at Liverpool this season, I'd have given it Sadio Mane if we were allowed to put him forward. But beyond that, it was Luis Diaz. He's the one who came in and made such an impact and got an extra 5% out of Liverpool when they needed it. Bad news now to see him potentially suffer a setback. I think it's just discomfort at the moment, and hopefully it's just a precaution. I always do this with the training and stuff, but the fact he's flown home, maybe there is going to be a bit more to it. But hopefully whenever he does come back and it's not too long away, he can have that same shot in the arm for Liverpool again, give him that boost to see him back on the pitch, because he wins games, he makes a difference, and he's a player that gets fans out of their seats and terrifies defences.
Definitely. Well, the Echo will keep you informed on this story. Paul Gorst, our Liverpool correspondent, is on his way out to Dubai as we speak. I think he's still in the air. I texted before, and he didn't reply. So he will be at Liverpool's training camp reporting back for the Echo. So we'll have more on that story. Tomorrow is a huge game, isn't it, Theo? You'll have your face painted, won't you? And your 3 lines will be on your shirt. I mean, look, I'm not going to turn this podcast into an England football team podcast, because you know my opinions, but it is a massive game. So I think we can't ignore it completely. Beth, do you think England can go all the way? They feel quite exciting this time around, don't they?
Yeah, I have a weird, got no evidence to back this up. It's just purely a gut feeling. I do have a weird feeling about England this year. I wouldn't be surprised, certainly if they got to the final. I wouldn't be surprised if they went all the way. I do think they've got so much quality in the squad. You know, there's been a lot of talk about Brazil's squad and Argentina's squad, and I think England is right up there with anyone, because you hear some of the names within that squad. It's just sort of superstar after superstar. I think obviously the defence is maybe where, that there are a few cracks, and Harry Maguire has been under the microscope, and to be fair to him, I think has done a decent job at the tournament so far. I think he's acquitted himself pretty well, but yeah, I think obviously a lot of the focus will be on Mbappe, and he's a superstar. We all know that, but I think it was Kyle Walker who said earlier this week, it's not England versus Mbappe, it's England versus France, and I do think man for man, I fancy England. To be fair, I don't think France are sort of as formidable an outfit as they were in 2018. I think obviously the midfield, they've lost, Pogba and Kante as well. And defensively, I think they can be got at. I really do. So I think it just depends who turns up on the day, really. Obviously, Mbappe will be hard to keep quiet. It'll be a handful for Kyle Walker. You'd imagine he'll be starting the game. But I do think England have a chance, and I do actually fancy them to maybe get something tomorrow.
Do you fancy them, Theo? Or do you think you'd be blowing your bugle for England in a World Cup final?
I probably do need the face paint at the moment. Still looking a bit grey after last night. I think France are winning this quarter final. I think England are getting knocked out, but that means that they can go into it, I suppose, with the pressure's off. If they can get a shock performance and get a win, it's a massive statement to the rest of the tournament. They've just knocked out the world champions, and you'd fully back them to go all the way, to go a step further than they did the Euros. But when we're talking about, is it going to be Argentina's year for Messi and these individual players that make the difference? Mbappe's becoming that heir, isn't he? He's the one who's going to be the best player in the world. He's already leading the way for the Golden Boot this year, and he's just such a sensational talent. That
the goals against Poland were just
outstanding. And we're talking about France not being as good as they were 4 years ago. That's right. But they've had so many injuries. Like even before the tournament or once it started, they had 4 or 5 players who had to withdraw from the squad. Having already seen Kante and Pogba ruled out. And you still look at the squad and go, that's decent. We all speak about the depth they've got at centre-back. Is it Saliba? He's not even started a game, has he? Because Konate's ahead of him in the pecking order. It's such a strong squad. It just feels like a squad that can win the World Cup. And I suppose it's used to England just disappointing you, falling short. There's a stat going round. I think they've only won against the team above them in the FIFA rankings once in however many years. I'm not sure how far back it goes, but that was Argentina in the group stages in 2002.
Yeah.
So you're used to England just falling short at that final hurdle. It's not even a final hurdle, but not quite having enough against these elite teams. So I can't look past France. But if England can do it, then I reckon they could go all the way. So sitting on the fence there. But
I think as well, like you mentioned that stat there as well about the FIFA rankings. I think one big advantage France do have, as well as obviously Mbappe, is the psychological aspect. I think sort of England, like you say, they're always sort of the bridesmaid, aren't they? They're always sort of falling at that final hurdle. France have been there, done that. Bought the T-shirt fairly recently as well, obviously in 2018. So I think if England go behind, it'd be interesting to see sort of how they responded to that, because, you know, I think psychologically France do have that edge. They know they can win. I think they'll probably come into it feeling like they're going to win the game. So I think it's whether sort of England's players are overawed by the occasion. You know, who knows? But I think that's one thing as well France have got in their favour is the fact that they've won it so recently and will believe that they're the favourites, I think, going into it.
I will say, how exciting is it for us for the Liverpool angle that new owners potentially in 2023, you're watching this game and just the 2 poster boys are going to be at Liverpool next season, aren't they? Bellingham and Mbappe.
Well, yeah, maybe one of them. I'm slightly surprised, to be fair, before we move on, that the France don't play Konate more, because when he's played this World Cup, he's played very well. Hugely. I used to like Varane a lot, but I'm not hugely enamored by Varane anymore. But yeah, I think about France, and I think, you know, I think sometimes, for example, Tchouaméni, who Liverpool tried to sign, is a 100 million midfielder playing for France, and I almost think people don't know him that well, that they don't necessarily realise how good that team and that squad is. So it's massive for England. I've got a feeling it could be very much like 2002 when you know, they played quite well, but ultimately were unlucky and lost out to a great Brazil side who went on and won it. And just feel like that there could be a similar sad story for England tomorrow, but ultimately, who cares? Half of my house would be happy if that's the case.
I was going to say, it's a massive game in the Rimmer household, isn't it? It's the Rimmer derby.
Yeah, well, you'd say that if I was really that worried, and lots of Caroline's friends will text me and message me, trying to rub it in if France win, but not quite realise I'm not really that worried. But moving on, Beth, we are going to shine the spotlight on you for a little bit now, because the Hull women are in action this weekend against Leicester on Sunday, and it's a big game for us, isn't it? Because they've had a bit of an indifferent season so far. I know they won in their last WSL game, didn't they?
Yeah.
So it's a big game at home and a big chance for them to sort of string together back-to-back wins, which they've not done this season, have they?
No, they haven't. It's a huge game. I think especially so after this weekend, the WSL breaks for nearly a month until January. So to sign off with a win, Leicester are bottom of the league at the moment. They've failed to pick up a single point this season. So I think Liverpool are currently on 8 points. So obviously a win take them to 11. There's still half the season to play, but it'd be a huge sort of weight off the shoulders, I think, if they were to get that sort of 11 point breathing, you know, little bit breathing space. I think that would be a huge relief going into the second half of the season, because in the WSL it's only one side that gets relegated. So at the moment it's looking very much like Leicester are sort of top candidates for that. But I think, you know, you don't want to give them any hope. So if Liverpool can just be professional and get the job done on Sunday, that'll be a massive boost for them going into the winter break.
Yeah. What's the mood like around the women's team at the moment? Obviously they were relegated a couple of years back, came back up under Matt Beard, who's back there having won the league with them in the past. You know, there was a buoyancy about them, wasn't there? Is that still there? Is it fair to say?
Yeah, I think it's the mood in the camp is pretty good at the moment. You know, I think that's probably one of Liverpool's biggest assets. I mean, like you say, I think, if we go back to sort of 2013, 2014, Liverpool were actually the first club to give all the players full-time professional contracts. They went on, they won the league back-to-back. So to go from that to then to be relegated, coincidentally the same year that the men won the league, it's not a good look for the club, and it's obviously hugely disappointing. But they had an absolutely blinder of a season last year in the Championship. And they came up and they got that win over Chelsea on the opening day, and it sort of felt like, gosh, they're right back in it. And Chelsea have won the last few seasons, won the league. So that was a huge statement. And then after that, it was sort of straight back to down to earth. They got beat 3-0 by Everton at Anfield, and they've been unlucky, to be fair to them, in some performances in the last couple of months. They've played fairly well, but they've been quite heavily reliant on Katie Stengel, scoring goals. She scored a pretty high percentage, but the last few weeks, sort of those goals have started to come, and they got back-to-back draws, which I think was important for them to sort of stop the rot, stop that losing streak. And then West Ham last weekend. That's the best I've seen them play all season. They were absolutely superb. First half in particular, they were just, they look so confident, and so I think that's the thing. When they've gone behind at times this season, they've not always looked like they have the response or the belief to come back, and they were superb on Sunday. And I think Matt Beard is a huge, he deserves so much credit. He was obviously at Liverpool when they won the league, and all the girls seem to absolutely love him, and he's straight talking, don't think takes any nonsense, but they all seem to really, really like him, and he seems to have built a squad of really good people as well as players. And I think that's important when things aren't always going your way on the pitch.
Yeah, they certainly have some really likable characters, don't they? You see a lot of them on social media and stuff. Yeah,
they do. They are a really good bunch, and the sort of team that I think would fight for each other on the pitch, which is obviously really important when you're in it, not in a relegation scrap, because I don't think Liverpool will be dragged down. I think they've started getting points on the board now, and a win against Leicester will be go a long way in ensuring that they stay up. But yeah, they're a really good group of characters, and the performances are starting to come now, and the results. So that's a huge relief for Matt Beard, I think.
Is that game at Prenton Park on Sunday?
It is. So they've actually it's the fourth of 4 back-to-back home league games. So yeah, anyone who for any men's season ticket holders out there, you can actually go and see it free, which while the men aren't in action yet, I think that'd be nice for anyone to go down and cheer the girls on. But I think the crowds have been good. They've been growing, obviously up on the last couple of years off the back of the Euros, but still a long way to go, I think, in terms of getting more people through the door, and week by week, it's steadily growing, but hopefully it'll continue to grow in the new year.
Brilliant. Well, that's 2 p.m. Sunday. Beth, for all of our listeners who are meeting you for the first time, how can they follow you on social media? Can you give us your handles?
Yeah, I've just realised I've not put my handle on the thing. Yeah. So it's at Beth_Lindop. So it's fairly simple. But yeah, if you want to keep up to date with what's going on with the women's team and with Everton too, if you're interested, then that's how you can give me a follow.
Great.
That's
thanks.
the first thing you don't like a player ratings.
Say that. Player ratings are always fun, but yeah, that's how you can give me a follow.
Yeah, well, it's been a cracking debut. Thank you, Beth, and Theo. You've soldiered on magnificently. You can get back into bed now and close the curtains. Yeah, but do some work as well. Right, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today on the Blood Red podcast. Please do follow Paul Gorst. He's out in Dubai. There'll be plenty of news over the next few days. Liverpool are in action on Sunday against Lyon, and then is it Wednesday, Theo, against AC Milan?
Potentially. I've not really paid attention to these games yet. I'm in World Cup mode because I'm such a big England fan, clearly.
Yeah, we're only paid to know. But yeah, they are in action as well. So busy few days for Liverpool, and I think things start to pick up a little bit after a barren spell for club football. But thanks very much for tuning in, and we'll see you again on Monday to discuss that game against Lyon. Bye-bye.